Welcome to the Extraordinary Executives Podcast, where business owners like you share their experiences, insight, and lessons learned. So grab your cup of coffee or tea and get ready for an engaging conversation. Here's your host, Randy Jones.
Welcome to another episode of the Extraordinary Executives Podcast Show. Today, we have a phenomenal guest. It is Miss Beall Adler, the CEO and founder of the Georgetown Bagelry. She's an artisan of bagels, a loving mother, a staple in her community, but most importantly, an extraordinary executive. Welcome, Mary.
Thanks, Randy. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
It's an honor. Hey, look, we got a lot of business owners that are going to be listening to this and watching this. And so let's just jump right in and, talk about your story. So tell me about Georgetown Bagelry, or better yet, why did you start it?
Well, I sort of inherited it. My ex-husband started the business in Georgetown, 1981, and we got married a couple years later. I actually wrote a book about this, well, part of it. And, never imagining divorce or any of that. When that happened, which was like 20 years later, I decided, we met in the bagel shop. I love bagels. Early on, I realized that, oh, God forbid, anything ever happened to him, I better know how to make a bagel, because I was from the Midwest and had no family around, anything like that. I left law school my third year to help out with the business. So that was that. So I just planted myself beside him, and I learned how to make bagels. And the business part of it back in the day just seemed like common sense to me, but it's really not so much common sense. So when the time came, and we had different, we had a factory at one point and other restaurants, and what I really love are bagels, so that was part of the worst divorce on the planet. When I took over the company, I took the bagel shop without full disclosure. And there was $750,000 debt, a lot of taxes. I didn't know any of this. My concern at the time was I had full custody of my kids and their safety and being able to put food on the table. So, I had to do a real gut check, a heart check with myself, and decide, who I am, where I'm going, what I want to be on a very a soul level, because this is my life. And then when I realized, and I'm going, just line by line, realizing, oh my God, all these taxes weren't filed, all kinds of stuff, payables off the charts, and just getting all of that in order. And so, I had 2 locations at the time, and M Street in Georgetown, where my kids kind of grew up, and that was the hub. The lease was expiring, and where we are now in Bethesda, Maryland, it's a tiny little it was a second thought, it's kind of handed to us way back in the day. And I've been there 26 years now, but
wow.
It was kind of, I was the only one that went back and forth between the different locations and kind of kept an eye on things. And
right.
When the time came, and I'm looking, the only real value in Georgetown at the time was the lease. And so I prepared to shift production to Bethesda because all the equipment was newer. Georgetown needed to be renovated. The entire building seriously needed to be renovated. So I put it on the market, I sold it, and that helped. And I even let the people that went in use the name, and I gave them a couple of bakers, but I knew that. And I was just very honest. I said, look, I've maxed out the bagel business here in Georgetown. It's it's a community, it's transient, it's college students, World Bank people and stuff like that. But really, pull in pizza, like an evening sales, something like that will up your revenue.
Right.
They didn't listen to me. They ended up going out of business. So I was kind of like, I tried. I don't even know where. There's so much that's happened over the years. So one thing that I really learned early on was a lot of the relationships in the business or how I viewed things
Right.
wasn't my view. It was my ex's basically. And so
Right.
I had to go direct with people. I had to meet the landlord who was the son of the original landlord. It was like a father to me. So it was his dad. He's my age. And just be really honest. And I'll tell you a lot. And I was a woman and I knew no other women in bagel baking.
Right.
There were none back then in the day. This is how many years? A lot of years.
You said the 80s, so I mean,
yeah. So
bagels
this
were just coming on the scene at that
It's
time.
been about 38 years, long
Right.
time. Yeah. I was in my 20s. So I had these conversations and mostly it was men, mostly, and they really held me accountable.
Wow.
And I found that really listening to my heart, it always served me. Like when I didn't know like what to do, I would just get still and listen and ask questions and do the next right thing.
Wow.
So yeah, and so I sold Georgetown, shifted. They didn't think I knew what I was doing, but
Right.
it looked like it was really a pathetic business at the time, but I had shifted stuff.
Right. Right.
So I ran and I wasn't sure if I was going to have to file bankruptcy or I didn't know how I was going to pay 3/4. It seemed just insurmountable to me at the time. Now I look back and I'm
Wow. You know, I think what's really interesting is that, the way that you describe it, the challenges that you go through, even before, I read the book E-Myth and the story that Michael Gerber talks about Sarah running her cake shop, and hearing your story be similar. A lot of times people will come to me and say, Randy, I'd love to start a business. And I say, why? They say, because I like helping people. I said, then volunteer is a whole lot easier, But the challenges that you have to overcome, especially, taking over something, learning not just how to make bagels, but how to run a company. And so time has passed by now. What's your role or what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Is it more of growing the brand, or are you still in the thick of it, mixing and making bagels, or what?
Well, at this point, so now I actually downsized the business. Now this is like the opposite of what most people would do. Twice I downsized. When I shifted to Bethesda, I ran wholesale. I had a couple of pretty hefty wholesale accounts. So I kind of like ran wholesale out of the back and retail out of the front. And over time and crunching numbers, I realized that wholesale just for me was not profitable. It's like setting up a whole nother company. And at one point we had a factory in Landover and we did do a hefty wholesale. And it was, so I get the dynamics of that. So I decided to stick with retail. At about the same time, I remarried. I fell in love with my husband, have like 3 stepkids, and it was a lot. The kids we had 5 kids in high school at the same time. So I have 6 children.
And run a business.
Yeah, and the business. So I just, step by step, day at a time, I pulled people in that have the same heart, like vibrational frequency as me.
Right.
So, one of the core values is just to be kind.
Right.
Kind and be creative, have fun, seek and improve ourselves, stuff like that. And then at one point, one of my sons, my oldest son, who's a Marine, this is one of the beauties of having a small business is the kids could come in and work. They learned, they grew up in the business, but it's different, coming in and eating a bagel and actually running stuff. So this son was in the Marines, Iraq, Afghanistan, came back and kind of not real clear on what he was going to do next, business major in college. And so he came on board to work with me and grow the business. And I brought in my mind, I wanted to separate my personality from everything because I've been doing it for so long, like in there waiting on people and mixing and baking and, basically doing everything. And so I brought in outside a coach and put more systems in place because I There's like three things for a good business in my mind. And, you have to have a good product, something to market, sell, marketing, and financial controls. So I had a great product, not really great financial controls and systems in place, and marketing. So we just started, and this was back when internet, and I got these young techie people, and I just learned. So I kind of learned that stuff. And when I brought my son in, he's a numbers guy, and he was operations for about 5 years, but my goal to this day is to grow it, because I have a new number that I want to be at before I bow out. And I just, I'm in a women's business forum, and I'm on the lower end for revenue.
Right.
And I just want to be in platinum before I, pass it on to anybody else.
So here's the thing. So tell me, based on that, I mean, like, you brought in people, you got a coach. What do you believe is been the biggest contribution to your current success? I mean, you've lasted. Most businesses don't last this long. You've downsized a couple of times. You changed positions and locations. You said people thought you didn't know what you were doing, but you're still here. You're still standing. So what do you think has been the biggest?
Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Build it, and they will come. So this location would never have been my top choice for picking a location for a bagel shop. I'm actually looking at locations now, and it's so much fun because now I get to choose. But I mean, you look out, there's a dumpster. It's at the end of a tiny shopping center. Parking is really not very good. I mean, it's from, traditional perspective, not a great location, but we're kicking ass. So a great product that people can't get anywhere else.
You said great people also.
Great people. And actually, since COVID, we've had some transition. So we're building a team right now, and it's pretty exciting. My son is gone. My daughter stepped in. They can't work together. The idea he was going to sort of shepherd her into it, well, that kind of didn't work. And she's like, "Oh, Mom, I can figure this out for myself." And anyway, there was a lot of emotional baggage for him between his father, me, and all of that. So he's like Mr. Very Healthy, Mr. Wim Hof, and gluten. And I'm like, well, if you're going to have gluten, you want ours. We don't put oil in, and stuff like that. So now my position is visionary. My daughter is
You're the VEO.
What's a VEO?
I guess the CVO, the Chief Visionary Officer of the company.
Yeah, I'm visionary. And, over the years, I've just got a great team, like a super accountant who's been with me, just off the charts great, a really good bookkeeper.
Right.
And, so that helps.
So here's a question to that point, which is a great, I often will, when I'm meeting with people, they often talk about team, together each achieves more, for the business owners that are listening. With your experience, you said you had the landlord, you had to be honest with them, somebody held you accountable. Who do you feel, if you had to do it over again, your son came in there, your daughter's in there now, who do you think is essential in building a team? Because you're currently rebuilding your team, whether it be because of COVID or whatever. Who would you say are the essential people that a business owner needs to have on their team?
For me, it's been accountant, lawyer, bookkeeper, and operations. Now, my daughter coming in is really interesting to me to see their different styles. It's kind of such a gift to be able to work with my kids and kind of be able to play with it and say, okay, we're not going to grow it. Just everything wasn't clicking right. And we don't need to, we can, do the work on other things. And she is a team person, she was always like captain of her soccer team, she's a great team person and very, feminist. I have all women working for me except for one guy. So it's very, a lot of feminine energy.
Right. Well, so to that point, the world is changing. We're doing a lot of things via Zoom. COVID came, restaurants had to, either pulled way back. Some of them shut down. Some of them had to pause. But like I said, you're still going. So
when COVID hit, now this is experience too, and just
right.
really having a lot of struggles over the years and not knowing what to do next. And probably one of the most important things I've learned is I don't do what everybody else does. And I look for the opportunity in adversity. So it looks like, oh, the world's coming to, everything is going wrong.
Right.
I just get still and I ask myself, okay, what's the gift in this?
Right.
What can I do that I haven't been able to do in perfect times? And so my son was working with me when COVID hit, and I said, okay, we're going to close down and renovate now. Everybody is saving their money. We're putting money into it. And I did a lot of research with production. I changed the whole baking process to make it more sustainable. And he did all that research, and I sent him up to New York to meet the guys in the business, and we closed for almost a month. And for our employees, what was great was it gave them a chance to socially distance. By the time I reopened, and also this was kind of like, I could get people working on the side to do all of these renovations and stuff because everybody was like desperate for jobs.
Right.
People were shutting down rather than working. So we actually did the renovation for much less than it would have cost if I was kind of waiting to open another shop and do it all at the same time. But I said, okay, this is an opportunity to do what nobody else would do. By the time we reopened, all of the customers were trained to socially distance.
Right.
We had been trying for years to implement online ordering, and people just love to, come in and stand in line and wait. And, I would stand there and say, if you order online, you can avoid the line. And because we could, in the kitchen, we can pump more out if we've got the orders.
Right.
And there's order errors with people talking. So it gets lost in the transaction. They have to make a decision and punch it in, order accuracy, all of that stuff. So after we reopened, online orders were like, boom. And we had all the systems in place, which for a small business isn't all that easy to do because the big guys just have more money,
You talked about Stephen Covey, and, just listening to what you did, they say the business owner, he would often use a phrase. He would say, discovery is looking at the same thing and seeing something different. And you saw what most people saw as a tragedy as an opportunity to sort of get ahead of the curve and really open up to really expand. With the things that you've been able to go through and overcome, you're having great success. Like you said, you're killing it right now. So based on that, what are some of the challenges that you face? You had challenges before.
Well, right now, commodities are shooting up. So, and if there's, getting flour and stuff like that, I'm watching those things like a hawk because I want to make sure that I can get what I need to make a bagel, right? This was before my son left to cost analysis. And
right, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, like, what does it cost to make a bagel and what are we charging? And I always had higher prices than anybody else. And I would go to my competitors and just talk to them about it because they don't want to talk to me because they don't think I know anything, right? So I'm like, all right, you guys just watch and learn. So we raised the bagel prices about a year ago, as high as the highest priced novelty bagel place, in Washington. They're like these young kids coming in, starting up, and I just watch them because they come and go, But I'm like, my number one responsibility as the owner is to run a profitable company. And if it's not profitable, I'm doing something wrong. So, and when you have employees that have worked there 20 some years, you got to pay people and create that kind of environment. So I raised the prices. I got a little bit of flack. It's like $25 a dozen, but I'm like, okay, you cannot buy what we make anywhere else. If somebody wants preservatives and all of that, they can just go around the corner and pick it up at the grocery store, somewhere else, but we're not doing that. And I have to charge what it's worth. Well, I got a little bit of slack and they say, how dare you? That I'm like, well, I'm a daring person, I just don't even answer that stuff. And
so value the quality, it has increased the value of what you do, and being able to make those changes and adjust to it. Here's a question, because I often will have conversations with business owners, and I'm hearing you said, your profit, you raise your price. How long? In the very beginning, you were just trying to perfect making bagels because, hey, you left law school making bagels. How long did it take for you to get, a real good handle, or what tips would you recommend getting a handle on your numbers? Because that is key, and really intimately understanding them.
I always felt very self-conscious and I am not a numbers person. Okay. And I had talked myself into being not a numbers person. So in my business form, it's a WPO, Women's Presidents Organization. I sit next to the CPA. I'm like, okay, I'm going to just suck in all the information, any phrases, words, and we have a financial, somebody very similar to you, like your expertise. I sit next to them, and when phrases and things come up that I don't really understand, I just ask. I ask my accountant. I just started asking more questions, and I have a really good feel. So, and my husband is like a numbers sleuth, and he would laugh at me because I'm like, well, I go by the feel, but I do have like a really great sense of that because it's so small and I've been doing it for so long. And even the cash in the tills, I can feel it in my hand. It still blows them away because I'm kind of, I know. So I do have the feel, but I also do get the numbers and know you just pull out the books and figure out how to, what your cost of goods are and, what you need to, what all your costs are and figure it out.
One thing I would tell, when I first started running my company, it was interesting that you said you could feel this. I would often tell my team, my employees, I said, business is almost like a rhythm. I can feel it. I can hear it. Sort of like, a machine. You hear those manufacturing machines making that. I can just feel the rhythm of business. And I could even hear, when things were off a little bit. And I think it's really interesting that you said you can feel even, the cash in the till. So based on the things that you've learned, if we were talking to yourself 10 years ago, and you said, oh, there she is. She's getting ready to go into the store. And you say, hey, let me talk to you. What would you tell yourself?
10 years ago.
Yeah.
To build the relationships, just build the relationships and ask for help. Pick up the phone, make calls, sit down with people. I'll tell you, customers have some of the best advice ever. It's annoying. It's kind of interesting because I get to see my kids, like I'm not around customers that much anymore unless they contact me through media. It might come across as a complaint or a know-it-all or whatever, but they usually have the best ideas.
Right.
Many have traveled all over the world and ideas and different kinds of expertise, and we just pick their brains,
Wow. So I guess, when it comes to a business, whether it be a product or service, you talked about Georgetown had a lot of transient people in there, students. Who's your ideal person? What do you look for? Like, how can we create more foot traffic? I watch The Profit, and Marcus is always talking about how can we create other products outside of our primary. Who's your ideal client that you like to see come in to your store?
Ideal clients. We love the students. There's a couple of high schools nearby, the community, the neighborhood, and students, the young people, because they come back, they bring their kids back. We have a lot of moms and their kids, and dads will come in with the kids, after games and stuff on the weekend. And yeah, that's ideal because it's all around community. Now there's other ways of, pulling in revenue,
right,
like corporate lunches, and that's a whole nother, that's a different thing. But ideally, it's these young people.
Yeah, with your daughter, running it now, I guess you guys are doing a lot of stuff with social media and everything, because that's where
we're trying to build. We're in the process of putting together a mentoring program because we'd like to help inner city girls learn about business and give them some skills moving forward in life. And, they can learn business skills. Waiting on customers is just, it's a skill.
Right.
That's really kind of where we're headed. I'm looking at locations more toward the city, in the city, and really, working with young women.
So you're in a businesswomen's group. You want to help young women. You want to take your lifetime of experience and be able to share it so that somebody sort of have a shortcut and also be successful. You employ a lot of women. At some point down the line, you won't be running the company. So what does that look like for you? Or
My exit strategy, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I don't, from a financial perspective, have another year or two because I have some different things on the books that I'm cleaning up. I love it. So I don't want to exit anytime soon. So I'm thinking maybe, 5-10 years, but I'm not in the hands-on. I come in really handy for my daughter she'll just have different questions about employee, a wide range of things, employees, different,
right.
So they renovated the shopping center and the roof was torn up. We had plastic on it. After I renovated, the landlord renovated the whole shopping center. So we had plastic for 2 years. I mean, it's just been the air conditioners were disconnected on the roof. She's pregnant. She's like, and it's so funny because I said, well, people think pregnant women can't do things. And I said, well, Aretha, I worked until the day you guys were born. She doesn't know any different. She's like, well, Mom, you did it. I can do this. And I said, do not go on the roof.
Right.
You said somebody else up there, but it's just really cool to have these conversations with my daughter. She's a lawyer too. So it's really kind of cool because she crosses the T's and dots the I's.
Did she follow your path, law school to the bagel shop? Is that where every lawyer should go? It looks like it's working out.
It took me a long time to realize I had a tax expert, highly recommended female lawyer, took me through the ringer. I ended up having to go to court and I had an IRS hearing and stuff. And she was supposed to represent another one of those heart-to-hearts. I sat down and said, Mary, you went to law school. You did the hardest part the first 2 years. I just sat down. I analyzed the stuff myself. I just read every single line. I didn't miss a beat. I wrote from my heart. And I'll be damned if they didn't give me the best deals ever. Just being straightforward and honest. And I got over the whole female male thing. And I just try to just be me, do me and not worry about if it's a man or woman or whatever. And just, bring some calm radiance into the world.
You know what? We started the conversation with, speaking and working and thinking and living from the heart. And we sort of ending it with just that same mantra, being me. This has been awesome.
Because there's no other you, right?
Right.
That gives you your authenticity right there. And it comes out in your product. They're made with love.
Right. What I took from this, I would say the P's you talked about, people, profit, process. But what I also heard was purpose. And your purpose comes through the quality of the product you provide and how you engage with people, how you listen, how you show vulnerability to be able to ask those questions and just say, all right, sometimes I know the answer, sometimes I don't know the answer. And I think when you take that approach when it comes to running business, because a lot of times people come to you as a business owner, how's business? Oh, it's great. When sometimes it's not all that great. And you really
it's usually not. It's like you get your mindset,
Right. When I first started my company, a friend of mine said, hey, now that today is your first day of running your business. And so business will never be your problem again. I said, wow, I'm gonna be a gazillionaire. He said, but employees might put you out of business. I said, no, I'm a people person. He's like, yeah, well, call me as that goes along. And I think, when you lead from your heart and you do what's right, it works out great. I really appreciate all the time that, you spent with me today. Outside of the questions that I asked, is there anybody who's listening to this, what one piece of advice would you give to them that I didn't ask or you want to expand on?
Well, when you brought up employees and, the team and all of that, that immediately came to mind was sometimes the biggest gift I have to give is embracing my no and saying no to people and letting go of people when they're not living their passion. And if I see that and we're not a right match, I got to let them go. They may not understand it at the time, but that's a gift. So really, knowing, just being tough sometimes.
Letting people go is not easy. A guy taught me a unique approach to that, just what you described. He said, you're not firing a person, you're freeing them to follow their passion because it's just not in your business. And I was like, wow. And then when I would have that conversation, I had one employee said, so am I fired? I was like, no, you're free.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful because, it might take them a week or two to kind of like, get it. Yeah.
This has been awesome. So
thank you so much.
No problem. Hey, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. Once again, we've been talking with Mary Adler of the Georgetown Bagelry, an executive who is not just a person that has a great heart. She's an extraordinary executive who not only makes a profit, she's an extraordinary mother who not only keeps her family together and gives them options and is involved in her community. She's definitely just extraordinary because she's true to herself. And once again, I want to thank you. Join us next week when we'll be talking to another extraordinary executive. I'm Randy Jones. I'll talk to you soon.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by PAS, Guardian, or Financial Growth Partners, and opinions stated are their own. Randy is a registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PAS, OSJ 11350 McCormick Road, Suite 202, Hunt Valley, Maryland. 21031-410-828-540. Securities, products, and advisory services offered through PAS, member FINRA SIPC. Financial representative of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. PAS is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Financial Growth Partners is the DBA name of IAPA, LLC, a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. 2022 139 007 624.